There comes a moment when the noise outside stops mattering, because the chaos screaming inside has become louder than everything else. This is no longer a temporary pain. It's a constant silence, a hollow ache that can't be solved with distractions, empty advice, or motivational quotes. It's the kind of silence that's born when you've tried everything, when you've been strong for too long, until strength itself stops making sense. And now, all you want is a way to keep going, but without pretending. While the world applauds those who seem productive, motivated, untouchable, there's a different kind of strength, quieter, nearly invisible. The strength of someone who chooses to keep moving with no applause, who gets out of bed not knowing why, who puts on a mask at work while silently digesting emotional wreckage. This video is not for those chasing quick answers. It's for the ones who, in silence, are rebuilding a fortress, brick by brick, thought by thought. Have you noticed how some people don't break, even when everything around them collapses? It's not because they're stronger. It's because they've learned a truth few dare to face. Control is not what happens to you. It's what you do with what happens. It's a mental technique, a silent discipline, an inner code. These people don't react the way others expect. They observe, they calculate, and they act when no one else has the strength left to try. That confuses people. That scares people. Because while most are emotionally drowning, these people are rebuilding themselves from the inside. This isn't a video for temporary inspiration. It's a passage, a crossing, for those ready to step into their own mental battlefield, to face the invisible saboteurs, and use pain as the foundation for something indestructible. Here, we'll talk about what you feel, but haven't been able to name. We'll break down the hidden mechanisms that trap your mind. We'll apply mental, philosophical, and practical principles to reorder the chaos, and prove that being unshakable isn't a personality trait. It's a mental structure, built with technique, with discipline, and with silence. You're tired of reacting, tired of explaining yourself, tired of waiting to be understood. Now is the time to do what no one sees, to silence the noise, to reorganize from within, and become something that no one can destroy. Because you're not here to impress anyone. You're here to fulfill a silent mission, to reclaim your own mind. And that begins now. There's a point where pain stops being desperation and becomes clarity. It's the moment you stop waiting. Not because you've lost hope, but because you're exhausted. You realize no one's coming. No one will ever fully feel what you feel. No one will hold your hand at the exact moment your heaviest thought crosses your mind. And in that brutal realization, a silent truth is born. Either you rebuild yourself alone, or you keep sinking while waiting for saviors that don't exist. Support matters, but relying on it as your emotional foundation is handing your spine to someone else's judgment. It's turning your strength into a hostage of validation. It's building your house on someone else's land. And when they leave, because they will, you collapse with them. The first collapse doesn't happen outside. It happens the moment you understand you must stop looking out there for what only grows in here. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor, once wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." That's not a pretty quote. That's rational survival. The way you interpret your pain, defines whether it becomes your prison or your launch pad. When you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What will I do with this now?" your mind takes its first step toward something no one can take from you: your inner axis. Try this exercise. Today, write down 3 moments where you waited to be seen, supported, rescued, and no one came. Then write what you could have done for yourself, not to blame, but to prepare, because it's going to happen again. And next time, you'll be different, quieter, more centered, more ready, because you stopped waiting and started becoming. There's a kind of pain that doesn't teach. It doesn't push you forward. It doesn't transform. It just drains you, steals your mental breath, numbs your clarity, and traps you in a loop where feeling becomes indistinguishable from barely surviving. It's useless pain, the kind that's born from comparison, from undigested regret, from the weight of who you should have been. It doesn't scream, it whispers, and that whisper is enough to keep you stuck. The mind learns patterns, and when it starts using pain as an excuse to avoid action, it begins to protect that pain, as if it were part of your identity. Psychologist Martin Seligman called this learned helplessness, when the brain links suffering with inaction and begins to believe that any effort is pointless. You exist, but you don't build. You wake up, but don't move forward. You dream, but never begin. Because something inside has already decided. There's no point in trying. And here's the silent mistake. You watch other people's pain as if it were a measuring stick. You assume they're handling it better, hurting less, moving faster, and suddenly your pain feels invalid. But what you're seeing is just a surface. No one uploads their emotional bankruptcy. No one posts the night they almost gave up on everything. Comparison robs your pain of its meaning. It turns your experience into weakness. It transforms your hurt into paralysis. It's time to flip that process upside down. Mental reset practice in 3 steps. 1. Close your eyes and name exactly what you feel. Don't say, "I'm not okay." Say, "I'm frustrated because," or "I feel empty because." 2. Ask yourself, is this emotion tied to a concrete action I can take? Or is it just leftover mental noise? 3. Decide. Will you act or will you accept? No halfway. No excuses. Because clarity is freedom. You're not stuck. You're numb. Numb from a mental pattern that can be broken. And it will be. With practice, with awareness, with presence. Because when pain stops paralyzing you and starts guiding you, it becomes useful. And those who learn to use pain as a compass, they move forward, even without a clear direction. Because movement itself is healing. You're not weak, you're overwhelmed. And there's a brutal difference between the two. Your mind is trying to function through a body that's biologically burned out. Your nervous system is addicted to urgency. Your breathing is shallow. Your thoughts are fractured. And while you blame yourself for lacking focus or discipline, your brain is simply trying to survive the inner fire you were never taught to extinguish. When cortisol, the stress hormone, stays high for too long, your ability to think clearly, make decisions, and act with purpose is hijacked. You slip into a state of hyper-reactivity. Every minor frustration becomes an emotional explosion. Procrastination becomes a shelter. Indecision becomes a lifestyle. This isn't weakness. It's chemistry. And the way out isn't willpower, it's small biological victories. The flow theory, developed by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, reveals that the deepest state of presence, where mind and body align, is achieved through simple tasks, done with focused attention. And the secret is in the dosage. Nothing grand, nothing heroic, just tiny actions carried out with total presence. Because that's where control over your biochemistry begins, not in effort, in silent repetition. Choose a task that takes less than 2 minutes. Drink a glass of water right after you wake up. Make your bed. Write 3 words on a piece of paper. Do it for 7 days. No exceptions. Because this isn't habit. It's a restart ritual, a concrete message to your brain. You're still in command. And if you can do that, you can take the next step, and the one after that. That's how you rewire your structure, step by step, breath by breath. The discipline you lost wasn't a character flaw. It was overstimulation without pause. But now, with one practical, rational decision, you begin to silence the chaos. Through the body, you reclaim the mind. And when that happens, the outside world loses its grip on you, because your command center is finally internal again. You learned how to look fine, how to say I'm okay, how to smile on cue, how to keep moving when everything inside you begged for a pause. And that behavior, it was praised. Masking pain was labeled strength. But no one told you the truth. That kind of strength is a trap. It's a shield so thick, it starts disconnecting you from you. Pretending you're okay isn't survival. It's self-abandonment. Each time you suppress what you feel just to appear composed, you're shoving your truth into a dark mental corner. And no, it doesn't disappear. It grows, quietly, fed by pressure, shame, and the hollow echo of loneliness. The mask gets heavier, and what once protected you starts to choke you. Carl Jung once said, "What you don't make conscious becomes your fate." He called it the shadow, the emotions you ignore, the truths you bury. But the shadow doesn't vanish. It bleeds into your reactions, into your fears, into the moments where you explode and don't know why. You feel irritated, burned out, like you're one breath away from collapsing. Why? Because you're clinging to a version of yourself that no longer fits the pain you carry. If you want to become unshakable, start by being honest. Radically honest. No need for a stage, no need to tell the world. Just you, with yourself. Write it down, clearly. What am I pretending not to feel? Ask again and again, until the answer shows up without a mask. Even if it hurts, especially if it hurts. Because truth is the only solid ground you can rebuild on. Every reconstruction begins with a quiet demolition. And that takes courage. Not loud, dramatic courage, but the kind that happens in silence, on paper, in thought, in stillness. The moment you stop pretending, the energy you use to uphold the lie becomes the power you'll use to heal. That's not weakness. That's emotional precision. That's strategy. Not to look strong, but to be whole. Even if that means starting over. Reaction is instinct. Observation is mastery. Most people respond to life like a reflex. Automatic, emotional, predictable. That's why they're easy to manipulate. A single insult throws them off. One rejection ruins their entire day. A disapproving glance shifts their mood, their posture, their decisions. But there's another kind of mind. One that watches the chaos and stays still. Not because it doesn't feel, but because it refuses to surrender control. Stoic philosophy warned, to react is to hand over your power. Epictetus wrote, "It's not what happens to you that hurts, it's how you interpret it." That's the essence of the technique. You don't become unshakable by yelling louder. You become unshakable when you own the space between what hits you and how you choose to respond. That gap is where your true power lives. And that power is quiet, almost invisible. But it changes everything. Picture steel being forged. It must endure the fire to take shape, but it's the silent cooling that makes it unbreakable. That's the mind that learns to pause. It doesn't dodge the heat. It withstands it. It watches. It converts reaction into awareness, emotion into decision. And when it finally moves, it doesn't strike with rage. It moves with surgical precision. Here's the tool. Use it now. Box breathing. Before you respond to what angers you, breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 4, pause for 4, repeat. This simple pattern disrupts the reactive brain and awakens the rational mind. It's not hype, it's neuroscience, it's subtle, but it works. What breaks you isn't what happens, it's how deeply you let it take over. Learning not to react doesn't mean you don't care. It means you've matured. You've built armor, not shiny, flashy armor, but a quiet kind made of stillness, presence, and internal command. And that kind of armor doesn't impress, but it protects. It guards what you've been rebuilding in silence, a mind no one else gets to control again. Rebuilding doesn't mean starting from nothing. It means reworking what's left. It's looking at the wreckage and realizing there's value in what survived. Pieces of you endured, held on. They're still here, even after everything collapsed. Most people try to erase the past, as if it were some stain to hide. But those who understand the mental game know what broke you can now hold you up if you know how to use it. Very few know how to do that. Even fewer have the patience for the quiet renovation that true transformation demands. Henry Ford failed 5 times before building an empire. That's not what made him remarkable. What made him unshakable was that each failure became blueprint material. Nothing was wasted. Everything became applied knowledge. And that's your task now. Turn each wound into wisdom, each mistake into map, each collapse into foundation. Here's the practice. Keep it simple. Write down 3 real things you've lost in recent years. People, time, money, trust. And for each one, write what it taught you. Not what you wish you'd learned, but what actually remained. That's where your next identity begins. You're not trying to become a better version of yourself. You're trying to become a real one. And that doesn't require applause. It requires precision. It requires honesty. You might be in a phase where nothing makes sense, where every day feels like a copy of the last, where the future looks distant and blurry. But this isn't the end. It's groundwork. And like all foundations, it happens below the surface, far from the spotlight, far from praise, far from speed. What you're doing now is clearing the soil, laying the invisible structure. And when it finally rises, it won't just be different. It will be yours. Letting go of the old version of you might be the most courageous move you'll ever make. Yes, that version worked for a while, but it doesn't carry you anymore. It can't hold the weight of who you're becoming. So it's time to thank it and leave it behind, quietly, respectfully, and with finality. Because what's forming now is a version of you that no one will ever be able to dismantle. Letting go isn't giving up. It's not walking away. It's knowing which battles are already lost and choosing to fight for yourself anyway. Many mistake strength for stubbornness, but real strength lies in knowing what to release, and more importantly, when. Because carrying what has already outlived its purpose isn't loyalty to your story, it's sabotage to your future. There's a kind of freedom that's born the moment you finally understand. You're not in control of everything. You can't rewrite what someone else feels. You can't force an outcome. You can't plan life like a scripted film. Marcus Aurelius, one of the pillars of Stoic thought, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That's not just philosophy. It's survival strategy in a world that constantly shifts beneath your feet. Maybe you're still attached to a conversation that never happened, to a reply that never came, to an expectation that fed you more than reality ever did. And that weighs on you, on your thoughts, on your sleep, on your body. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means recognizing that some moments have already served their purpose, even if they arrived wrapped in pain. It means stopping the need to rewrite a chapter that's already been printed. Do this today. Create a release list. No filters, no justifications. Write down everything you're trying to control, but can't. People, outcomes, reactions. Write it. Say it out loud. Feel the discomfort, and move anyway. Not because it's easy, but because staying chained to what you can't change is a cost your mind can no longer afford. And freedom, it won't come from a single moment of relief, but from doing this again and again, until letting go becomes as natural as breathing. You don't lose yourself by releasing what's holding you back. You find the pieces of you that were trapped inside situations that expired long ago. A free mind doesn't have all the answers. It simply stops wasting energy on dead-end questions. And those who master this, they intimidate. Because while the world burns itself out trying to control what was never theirs to begin with, you move forward silently. Most people keep waiting for the right moment to act. They wait for full clarity, the perfect mood, the emotional alignment. But that moment, it rarely comes. Because chaos doesn't send a warning, and often it doesn't leave. It's you who must learn to walk through it, without losing your center, without dropping your stance, without letting go of your purpose. Motivation is unreliable. Today, it's here. Tomorrow, it's gone. Discipline, though, that's different. Discipline is forged in silence, built when nothing feels right, in the shadows, on the days when quitting whispers louder than reason. And those are the exact moments that define who you are. Not when you're inspired. When you're drained. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, said, "Every small act is a silent vote for the person you want to become." And he's right. You don't transform through dramatic resolutions. You transform through invisible, repeated choices. So start small. No. Start microscopic. Wake up. Drink a glass of water. That's it. Let that be your new sacred rule. No negotiations. Then add the next layer. Maybe 5 minutes of reading, 2 minutes of silence, 1 sentence reflecting on your day. It doesn't have to impress anyone. It just has to be consistent. Because consistency is what lays the new internal structure. This quiet journey is uncomfortable. There's no applause, no finish line, no instant results. But there is one thing: a rational certainty that with each tiny step, your mind is reordering itself, gaining depth, stability, and slowly, the things that once felt overwhelming begin to lose their grip. You start walking through the chaos like someone who knows exactly where to place each foot, even if the ground is still forming beneath you. Those who master the invisible, the repetition, the ritual, the silence, eventually shape the visible. That's why people watching you won't understand. Because your strength isn't in what you show. It's in what you hold internally. No audience, no rush, no interruptions. You didn't make it this far because you had all the answers. You made it here because something inside you whispered, "Keep going." And in times like these, just continuing is a radical act of courage. What once felt like empty silence is starting to feel like space. Space to hear your own thoughts clearly. Space to rebuild without noise. Space to be without needing to explain or impress. There's no perfect map for the path you're on, no step-by-step manual to becoming unshakable. But there are principles, there are tools, there are decisions, and most importantly, there's presence. When you stop reacting and start observing, when you trade impulse for self-command, when you release the illusion of outer control and reclaim your inner authority, the world doesn't change. You change, and that alone begins to reshape everything around you. You don't need to fix everything right now. You don't need to figure it all out today. What you do need is to choose one principle, just one, from everything we've explored here, and apply it, slowly, deliberately, not out of pressure, but out of clarity. That one silent action will be your first step forward. And as you repeat it, day after day, you'll begin to notice something powerful. What once felt unstable now feels like ground beneath your feet. What once broke you can't reach you anymore. The silent hero doesn't need applause. He needs consistency. He needs clarity. He needs a solid internal framework. And you've already started building yours. Brick by brick, thought by thought, decision by decision, quietly, but with full presence. If this message hits something inside you, share it with someone else who's also rebuilding, in silence. And before you go, I recommend one more video. Being called crazy is the first step to success, Henry Ford. In that story, I explain how Ford was mocked, dismissed, called insane, and still built an empire. Because he learned to tune out the external noise and focus entirely on what only he could see, his internal vision. If Henry Ford had listened to the voices saying, "This will never work," he would have stopped, but he didn't. He did exactly what you're learning to do now. He went quiet. He stayed focused. And he rebuilt from within. The same silence you're learning to use today could become the foundation of your turning point.